You wish you could spend more time with them. You wish you could say a few things before they pass. I was distraught.
She had died on the operating table.
Oh my God.
Estelle was on a quad bike and has hit a barbed wire fence.
Well, Estelle was brought into our lives 23 years ago, and when she was placed into my arms, she was a bundle of joy.
Was pretty protective of her growing up. As a kid, she'd be running around with my brother Sean and myself.
Saw Estelle grow up from a young little energetic fighter. She just sort of carried on true to herself her whole life.
With Estelle, she had a hearing impairment. Just meant that Sean and I were always taking that extra care.
Had some struggles at school, but she battled through it all. Sports was her escape route. She was really good at sports, really good at sports.
We played a lot of the similar sports, quite active and outgoing individuals.
She would always come down like once or twice a year, and we would just play games as kids, go to carnivals.
I guess there was a lot going on. We'd go out drinking with friends at parties, like just what normal 16-year-olds do, I guess.
In high school, it was we'd see each other pretty much every day at school. Obviously, she was in the same block as me where I had my locker.
Obviously, school was a big part of it as well. And I think right before the accident, she just left and started her apprenticeship with hairdressing.
It became challenging for her because of her deafness.
Estelle knew that hairdressing wasn't going to be for her, but she was just going to give it a go.
A lot of things that she's done in her life, she's always given it 100% go, and that's what I admire about what she's done.
Estelle needed some time out to breathe and think about her choices. We have a family friend that owns a farm, and
I remember Estelle messaging me saying she was going to come down, but she told me not to tell anyone.
And so she didn't tell me that that was her plan. She's been going there since she was about 2-3 years old, so she's very familiar with the farm. That's nothing unusual for Estelle to go there. But my gut feeling as a mum, I just felt it's just not right. You don't need to go just yet.
I received a phone call from Sam, Estelle's friend from a farm, and Sam said that there's been an accident and she's badly hurt. And I thought, oh my God. So I got off my station, I rang Joanna and I told Joanna what had happened.
I don't know what's going on. He's distraught. I went, oh my God, Albert, don't tell me she's gone to Warrnambool. I told her not to go today. And that's when I got the call from the AMBO officer. And he said, we're with Estelle. We're in Warrnambool and she's been involved in a quad bike accident and we're attending to her now. I couldn't really process it, but I was listening. And that's when he said to me, we've got her breathing, and I realised it was serious. Then the officer said, we're going to now travel all the way to Alfred Hospital. Are you able to get yourself there? I said, I will.
So I got there first. I was actually on my way home from work, and I was just sitting there thinking, well, what am I waiting for? I didn't know what to expect.
I was in Vietnam at the time. I was away with my partner. We were away for 2 weeks to celebrate our yearly anniversary. I was torn because I wanted to be there with my family. I was prepared to fly home.
They gradually made their way to the hospital, but when we got to the hospital, they had already prepared a space for us. And to this day, I can't listen to helicopters now because I didn't know whether my daughter was arriving alive or not.
We all had no idea what exactly happened and how bad the severity of the injuries or like what actually took place. We just knew something serious.
Well, I turned up at the hospital, still in my scrubs, and I remember going into this little room. Joanna was there, Albert was there. I feel like my parents were there, maybe. Sean was there, bit of a blur.
It was about 6 hours by the time I saw my daughter, and the longest 6 hours I have ever gone through.
The nurse came out and told us to Joanna and I to come where Estelle was. And of course she was in a bad way, a really bad way.
And I think the biggest concern was obviously then seeing Mum being quite in shock because they weren't used to that kind of news. I mean, I've had an accident myself, and when that happened, it was more or less, he's okay, but we'll just have to see how we go. Whereas this one was more like, she's not good, and we don't even know if we'll be able to keep her alive.
She had died on the operating table 3 times, and that's when it sort of all started to hit home a bit for me.
Hi, I'm Estelle, and this is my story. I can certainly remember the day of the accident like it was yesterday. I remember seeing my friend running towards me in complete utter shock, and I was trying to figure out what that look meant. Something obviously really bad happened. And I looked down and I remember I was sitting in a puddle of my blood, and I was soaking wet and I was shivering, I was cold. It was my face. So I touched this side of my mouth and my jaw, and I realized that's not my face. That is my teeth, bones, all of that. Right now, all I need to focus on is trying to stay alive and breathe, because I could feel myself getting unconscious. That was a long 45 minutes of waiting and trying to stay alive. The longest 45 minutes of my life. I'm grateful that I couldn't feel any pain. The paramedics leaned over my bed and just flicked my hair across. Oh shit. Was the reaction, and I'm like, excuse you? What? Shit, okay, this must be really bad. Air paramedics now, they're on the phone calling the air paramedics to come to the scene.
The barbed wire displaced a large part of your jaw, and we were mostly worried about your airway and obviously the main arteries and veins in your neck there. Yeah. And the fear was when you get an injury that there's inflammation and that might have closed off your airway. So I don't remember if you remember the helicopter ride.
And that's when I realized I'm getting a helicopter ride. Cool. But that's the humor I had, and I couldn't understand why. This is a very serious situation, and I'm cracking jokes and finding the humor in it all. But I think that was my survival instincts to keep me alive, to keep me going. And I couldn't even tell you how fast the air paramedics arrived. It was like they were just there within seconds. Everything happened so quickly. And they're like, okay, Estelle, we're gonna put you in a nice good sleep. I'm gonna get you to hospital safely. Seconds later, I realized they were putting me in an induced coma, and they were telling me, Estelle, it's time to stop talking and go to sleep. Again, all of a sudden, I was out like a light. That's all I remember from that.
Thankfully, Professor Mark Fitzgerald, who we're always going to be, Professor Mark Fitzgerald, I'd been in Sydney all day, and he was given a call to come back to Melbourne because he had an urgent case to attend to. And he came back, and we met him in the emergency ward where Estelle was, and he explained what had happened and explained what they would do to save her. And as I said, Professor Mark Fitzgerald, God bless him, he'll always be someone I'll always be grateful for. Anyway, so he told us what they would do, and of course they did what they could in the emergency ward, and then Estelle was transferred to ICU.
And it feels like soon after that we could go see her. So went into ICU, and Estelle was very swollen, had a scar from here to here, and had a tracheostomy. So because she had a fractured mandible, she broke her jaw.
The main jugular vein has been totally severed.
Had shattered all the teeth inside of her mouth.
She has lost a big part of her cheek, jaw.
Everything was really swollen.
And we've had to reattach her tongue, and we don't know whether she'll be able to speak. And I didn't know what to say to that. I just went, okay. As a child, we were told that she will not speak because she was hearing impaired. She fought those odds and she could speak. So she's going to do it again. I just said that straight out to the doctors. I said, you don't know Estelle.
I don't even like repeating this, but that half of her face was off, and that half of it had come up, and the rest was all shattered and broken. All her injuries were directly aligned to where I work and is what my specialty is. So I was like pretty much all over it.
When I woke up from the coma, the first thing I saw was my mum, my dad, and I remember I also saw my brother Sean there, and they're both crying, and you know, they're holding my hands, they're kissing my hands, telling me everything's okay and that they love me. And I realized this isn't a dream, this actually happened. Okay, you can't cry. You cannot show your emotions to your family. You gotta be strong, Estelle. You gotta be strong. That was one of the hardest moments And I realised the next few stages, it's only going to get harder. Me waking up was only just the beginning.
We had the football grand final in Richmond, so that was probably about 4 or 5 days after. When she opened her eyes, it was too hard for her. I think it was probably 2 minutes, even if that. And we all got excited and, "Hi Estelle, it's us, it's Mummy, it's Daddy." And we had that small little window, told her where she was, what had happened, and that she was doing good, and that she just had to cooperate with them. Whatever they tell you, you do it.
Again, I was still in Vietnam. I had 1 or 2 more days before I was scheduled to come back home. Yeah, Richmond was in the grand final, first time since 1982, I believe.
The nurse, she walked by and she saw the scarves and what have you, and then came back and said, "We don't allow TVs in ICU, but in your case we will."
And we just felt really, connected to the journey that Richmond were on alongside Estelle was on. It was something we weren't expecting, like we hadn't seen Richmond win in so many years.
The things I enjoyed the most was going to Richmond football games, because that was a season Richmond was doing really well. So I attended nearly every game.
Dealing with Estelle's injuries and so forth, our focus was changed, but at the same time it was a nice positive thing to see on the side.
Okay, yes, you have had an accident. It wasn't a dream. You did have that, but you are going to go back to sleep. And Richmond just won the grand final. And then she went totally asleep.
My nickname became Tiger Girl because everyone knew I went for Richmond, and Richmond won the grand final.
She's actually been able to transfer that information and give us a reaction of, Richmond just won and I can't talk, It was like that kind of thing. So it was awesome.
It was over, I'd say about 22 surgeries all up. It was a lot.
The head of plastic surgeons arrived and said, "This is a big job. It is life or death at the moment."
There was numerous operations, and there was one point where she went in, and then Sean and we went down the road, went for lunch, and then I got a call from Joanna saying she's had an allergic reaction, she stopped breathing, they've had to take her out, they can't do the operation.
It didn't happen, and it got postponed by a week.
They nearly lost her. I think that's the point where I was probably most panicked and heart sunk, because it was so unexpected.
She only had one hearing aid working. We played all her music. One music that we were surprised, and it's Bob Marley's song, "Don't Worry About It," Three Little Birds. Don't worry, everything's going to be all right.
It was really hard. I remember a point where I think it was my sisters were like, "Georgine, you need to not go to the hospital and you need to pull back a little bit."
I don't know where I'd be without my beautiful niece, Georgine, who's a nurse. And she was just my backbone, really. She was my medical and spiritual support till this very day.
I never felt tired. I never felt anything like that. It was just that this has happened. This is what I'm going to do, and this is what needs to be done. Yeah, I found that hard. I wanted to just be her nurse, but anyways, not my hospital.
Seeing my sister there hooked up to all the different machines, and being an older brother, you're there to protect them and stop that from happening. For me, it was just flashbacks to seeing my brother a few years previously go through the same thing. So I cried, held mum, held dad, and yeah, I think from there on I was there pretty much every day.
We basically lived out of the hospital for at least 4 days straight, and then from then we sort of would rotate every 6 hours a day. We'd come back and forth. I was pretty much there for 2-3 weeks, and then had to go back to work.
It was tough. It was really tough.
And we just couldn't get Estelle to put on weight. And I remember all she would eat was my mum's pumpkin soup or gravy and potato mash from KFC. So every time I came in, I was like, "Here's some potato mash and gravy, eat it." But that was all she would eat. I think for me, and what I was saying to Joanna was like, this is going to be many, many, many months/years of working through this. And then that was when it became real, because the more Estelle woke up, the more she was doing, the more she realised how huge of an impact this was going to have on her and her life.
And she developed a lot of friendships with the nurses, all the Tiger pictures and support. Everything was about the Tiger Girl of Alfred Hospital, who's going to walk out of here talking. And she did. There'd be lots of visits to in and out of hospital for lots and lots of operations still. She persevered through this whole thing and determined to be able to re-engage with her friends and her social life and drive again and talk again and communicate again and work again and date again and all of that. She did it. And doctors were amazed that she was able to use her voice to talk and to eat. And then she decided, well, I'm actually going to embrace my scar. It's part of who I am.
So I want to take the opportunity to thank my family, my friends, my Alpha team at the Alpha Hospital, all the doctors, nurses, all the specialists, my rehab team, my local GP, my dental team. You know who you are. There's a lot of people that I've got to thank, because if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be standing here right now.
We love you, Estelle.
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 Estelle, we all love you dearly.
So, Tiger Girl out. Is that good? Yeah? Okay, cool. That's a wrap.